All right, welcome again to Avance Web Cafe series. My name is Kanan, CEO of Avance, a HR tech fintech company focused on employee life cycle. This Web Cafe, today's topic is the Great Resignation vs. the Great Retention. I think the Great Resignation has been a topic a lot of people are discussing on various platforms. Some people say it doesn't apply for us because the older ones wouldn't want to resign, but some people say, yep, people are burnt out, they're leaving. Whatever it is, there's many things to talk about it. So with me, I have a few other people joining me to have my coffee with me. It's a web cafe, so we told our friends who are attending today they can bring any drink. I don't know what they brought along for this session, but very quickly, the people that we are having today who are going to be joining us in our web cafe. Maybe I'll let them quickly introduce themselves. Maybe I'll go in the order of the slides, right? So let's go with Shirley. Shirley, want to introduce yourself?
Hello, hi, nice meeting all of you. I'm Shirley here. And I have just joined this company about 6 to 7 months ago. Of course, I'm happy to be here to share my opinion, but most importantly is to also to understand from your view on about this topic. So hopefully we have a good time together. Thank you.
Shirley, how do you pronounce your company name? I'm sure a lot of people ask. It's a very long name.
It's called Heranet.
Heranet. Okay, that's easy.
Yeah.
Okay, Gary.
All right.
Yep. Hi everyone. So I'm responsible for learning and performance group-wide in my organization. I've been on the people development side as well as end-to-end HR for quite a number of years across various industries. So happy to be here and look forward to learning from everyone as well.
All right, awesome. Thanks for joining us in the Web Cafe. Vivek.
Hi everyone, Vivek here. I'm a millennial specialist. Basically, I run a training organization and we do coaching and consulting for organizations, especially when they are struggling to understand what the millennials and the Gen Zs want from the workplace. And really happy to be here to really share some insights and also to learn from everyone else about the Great Resignation and the Great Retention.
All right, so millennials, so that's not me. Okay, Chuming.
Awesome. Thank you, Kanan, for having me, and nice to meet everyone. My name is Chiming, and I lead emerging markets channel partnerships at LinkedIn Talent Solutions, which includes solutions that I'm sure you guys are familiar with, LinkedIn Recruiter, LinkedIn Learning, and so on. Today is actually my 1-year anniversary at LinkedIn. So I'll have a story later on. I'm actually part of this, Great Resignation story because, technically I, resigned and found another my next day during the pandemic. So yeah, I'm looking forward to sharing a bit of that story as well.
Okay, so we want to hear your personal experience as well as the LinkedIn representative. All right, Ross.
Hi, I'm Roslyn. I'm definitely with Avance and Kanan and the team. So basically, I'm the senior business consultant. So we worked with clients and, of course, mostly the HR and talent acquisition professionals in understanding what are some of the employee engagement and the entire life cycle journey. So really excited and very grateful to have all of you joining us today, being a typical Monday, which I know all of you will probably have a very busy schedule. So thank you once again on behalf of Avance. Hope you enjoy yourselves.
Awesome. And we have also Leah, our marketing support, who's actually facilitating this whole session. So as promised, no screen, no presentations, no slides. I think people have enough of it. And this is the last thing you want on a Monday after a weekend. So I thought let's chat. I mean, this is an important topic because different companies have different challenges in respect to Great Resignation, right? So maybe somebody wants to go first, telling us what is your perspective of this Great Resignation. Are there any specific challenges your company is facing with it? Or maybe it's not a problem for you at all? Anyone?
Maybe I can go first. I'll start off with the LinkedIn perspective, because this is something that I think at a company level, this narrative has been going around a lot. It's one of the key narratives that we're having with clients across the talent solutions business. And our CEO, Ryan Roslansky, has gone on Time magazine, an article, given several interviews about this. At LinkedIn, we are positioning, or we're calling it the Great Reshuffle, because with a whole bunch of resignations, that also means that people are joining a whole bunch of jobs. And the number of people who are actually changing their roles or their jobs on LinkedIn has gone up 50% year on year last year compared to this year. So, which means that 50% more people are changing jobs than usual, right? Than last year and before. Just maybe some conversation starters, some of the reasons that, obviously a lot of research and they've been talking to people, both millennial, mid-career and so on. One of the interesting reasons that has come up is that through the pandemic and through the experience of working at home, people have started to realize what they want and what they don't want in a job. So they've started to sense, like companies that, have maybe cultures which potentially could be a bit toxic, is exacerbated, is more severe when the managers cannot see the people in front of them, and like micromanagement happens and things like that. In other cases, maybe not the fault of the employer or employing company, people have realized that, hey, actually I can get a lot more done when I work remotely, or I can do side hustles, I can earn more money, or I can manage my family at the same time. So they realized, what are some of the new things that they can do with this new way of working, and that's prompted a lot of people to, consider what else that they could be doing. Yeah, maybe I'll take a pause there for a while and see if anyone else has something to chip in.
I think I'll add into what Jimmy has mentioned about side hustles. So I think the Great Resignation is not exactly a new term. It was actually coined many years ago. It's just that it's gained popularity only in recent times. And a lot of the news comes from the US. But I think with regards to side hustles, we're seeing a new way of hustling. You see people going on Fiverr, people going on Upwork, to do part-time. In fact, because of the pandemic, I think Fiverr has said that they've seen a 2 to 3 times increase in terms of the number of freelancers they have on their platform. And then besides that, there's also the popularity in cryptocurrency. So you're starting to see people in their 20s who are probably making more money, from investing in crypto, which I think, before this pandemic, I think the challenge that we were facing is competition across other companies and perhaps the gig economy. But now you might even compete with crypto. People may say, look, I'm not going to work anymore. I'm just going to be doing this full time. In fact, I know some people in Singapore who have given up their work and they say, I'm ready to retire. Yeah.
That, not only crypto, gaming also. So we've seen people actually becoming full-time gamers. So even within my Philippines office, I had 2 of them. One lady, key position, she left to become a full-time crypto trader. And then she managed to convince another employee to go with her. And I don't know whether they're full. I see the LinkedIn profile, it still shows Avance. Of course, they left already. But I think they are doing full-time crypto and NFTs and all that, right? And now with the metaverse and all this coming in, I don't know whether this is going to contribute more to the Great Resignation. But is it only millennials doing this, or all ages?
Everyone.
Everyone, huh?
Everyone.
Am I missing out something? FOMO?
I think it's probably the same thing as when Bitcoin first came around. People were apprehensive. Millennials probably catch on to it faster because it's techy, it's popular, they have less to lose. And yet I know people who are probably like in their 30s and 40s, right, who say, look, I'm just going to put in my entire life savings.
Wow.
And this is not in the US, this is in Singapore.
Really?
Yeah. I was just chatting with one of my friends who said that, he has this guy who's an army officer and he just put his entire life savings in. And he's now a millionaire. So he quit his army job and he just withdraws $400 every day.
I would say that it's better than 4D and Toto lah.
Definitely.
I feel like going up to those fellas lining up and say, hey, maybe you should buy some Bitcoin instead of like, every week spending 50.
Hey, but there are also people like me. I invested the wrong tokens. I lost money also, So
okay, yeah, that could happen as well. Gary, you sound like quite an advocate. Do you have a pretty large position?
No. I study a lot into it. I take a more cautious approach. Yeah.
Hey, Vivek, you
I'm
should say
from-
something because you represent millennials, right?
Yeah, Vivek, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking like, from investment point of view, I feel like this generation is a little bit more woke. They're really looking into how they can diversify their portfolios, how they can create multiple streams of income. I feel like, what I'm hearing and from people as well is on the ground is that they are saying that, I'm realizing that, that is more than one. So it's becoming like more of a, how do I build a portfolio career? And how do I have different types of income streams as opposed to just trading my time for money? And I think that's becoming, I think we're leaning more into that as the gig economy progresses. I know LinkedIn is also gearing up for a lot of freelancers to be on board as well. So I think we would definitely love to hear, some points around those things, but definitely moving more and more into using the internet to, develop more and more income streams. I think that's definitely in the trends for the moment.
Okay, so it looks like, by the way, before we go on, there was another person, I will not mention which organization. He was supposed to join the thing with the web cafe, but he said, can I go for a next web cafe? Because this topic, I don't think so applies to Singapore because a lot of people are desperately holding on to jobs. So I don't think so Great Resignation applies. So he doesn't want to contribute. He said, I'm not coming for this web cafe. I don't know how far it's true. He said, this is a US thing, not an Asian.
Actually, that was also a question I had, right? Are we seeing any statistics that the Great Resignation is applicable here as well? Yes, people are a little frustrated, but does it also mean that they are readily leaving their jobs without getting another one, without securing the next one, right? That's also a question that we have to look into.
Yeah. I actually have something to share on that. So I don't have like published statistics from the company for Singapore or Southeast Asia specifically, but I have a lot of anecdotal evidence from like just myself, and just now I alluded to my own story and people around me. So when the pandemic happened, let's say from Q1, Q2 of 2020, a lot of people that I spoke to were desperately hanging on to their jobs because of the uncertainty. Like they weren't sure if a lot of firing was going to happen, and a lot of letting go of people did happen in several major verticals. But people in my circles were desperately hanging on to their job. Now, it came to a point, kind of maybe Q3, Q4 last year, where I think government started to inject money. So we're talking about Singapore, right? So government started to inject money into businesses. Companies started figuring out how they would operate, with the new normal, with this pandemic, and all the letting go of people has sort of happened already, and some areas started to hire again. Now, when that kind of job certainty started to happen, then a lot of people in my circle started looking for new opportunities and having open conversations about it. On LinkedIn, especially in sales and customer success and like customer facing roles, like there were tons of jobs. Like if you are in sales, there are tons and tons of opportunity in all the tech companies, because the pandemic was a boom for cloud and tech solutions, right? So you've got your TikTok growing, all the cloud solutions, Amazon Web Services hiring aggressively, Workday all hiring aggressively, and there was just tons and tons of roles available. So even people who are pretty close to me, they found roles at Shopee, at TikTok, at Facebook. I moved to LinkedIn. And I think that plus the individual circumstances. So actually, when circuit breaker happened, so we're here in Singapore. Circuit breaker happened. I got the chance to stay at home, and at that time I had, my wife and I had a baby who is now the toddler that's making a lot of noise outside.
Oh, so you had a productive pandemic.
No, this pre-pandemic. Yeah. So this was made pre-pandemic, but I think it kind of that was one of the situations where it made me realize that, hey, this, like, I'm working like way too hard for this phase in my life, and there is something else that could be paying a lot better and give me like work-life balance that I need. So that's what I was saying, that I realized that there could be a better life and there is something out there. So as I was looking for roles, and I suddenly realized that, hey, there are companies that don't in Singapore we use the term chiong, right? They don't chiong as hard It's very family oriented, but they pay a lot more. So that was one of the things that got me.
So
to
people think
move
they can make better money for less work, better work-life integration or balance. So I will switch. So that contributes to a bit of that resignation. Okay. By the way, you talk about the tech companies, right? So are these IT roles, or these guys are like jumping into other kinds of jobs as well? Because I know IT is a big demand. There's a report recently that it's so hard to get IT people. Even for me, we are trying to increase our team in India and Philippines. We can't find a lot of IT people. They're becoming a lot more expensive now, right? The developers and infrastructure architects and all that.
Yeah, the rates going up and wages going up is a whole other story. So that one also, like that narrative starts in the US, but I think globally, a lot of companies are seeing wages go because people, now that there's a war for talent, companies just realize that they have to pay people more. And I've been listening to a lot of podcasts on this. Arguably, companies could have paid people more before, but people never asked, so companies never pay. Then now people like suddenly, hey, actually I can demand more, right? So the more people demand, the more companies say, okay, in order to get the good talent, you got to pay. But to short
You're
answer to
giving
your
Ross
question,
ideas. Don't give Ross any ideas. Sorry, go on.
You read my
short
mind.
answer sorry. No, but Kanan, to your question, the short answer to that is actually the roles I was seeing were customer-facing roles. So a lot of sales roles, right? So you saw companies like Salesforce, even Microsoft Teams, right? So Microsoft Teams, Slack, right? Everything that was being powered by remote work and hybrid work, suddenly they need a lot more salespeople because companies all over the place are trying to figure out how to transform to the new
All the
mode.
cloud-based products,
Yeah, so they just needed more people to talk to clients.
Right. So for surely you guys you are taking care of HR for a multinational company. Gary, you are HR in a conglomerate. So you guys have any challenges on this as well, or to keep people, or what specific issues you guys are facing? Is there a retention issue? Shirley?
I think, for Heranet is slightly different because our background is not so high tech, and industry is a very niche market where tunneling is a specialty by itself. In fact, I think in our context, right, we are not able to find all the tunneling specialists in the Singapore per se because of the specialty that is required. So a lot of them we are actually importing them from overseas. But beside that, right, if you are talking about local people, I think one of the trend that I see is that personally, I don't really have a lot of good experiences especially with the millennials.
Oh
People
no!
people
I'm
that
sure
is
Vivek is going to
within,
say something after this.
Vivek, defend your
people
tribe.
that is
Sorry, go ahead,
people
Shirley.
that is between the age of 25 to maybe 30, 31 and 32. Okay. The common thing that I'm looking at it is that they are expecting a much higher pay job, but with lesser work and with less commitment and responsibility. Okay, why do I say that? I think one of the worry as a HR person that every time when my boss or their line manager comes to me and said, okay, I want to promote this person to be a head of so and so department with only 10 years experience in a particular field. So my question behind the back of my mind is always, what makes you think that this person is up to this level as a head of the department versus somebody who has a 20 years of experience within the same field, but for whatever reason, this person may not be selected. Okay, so generally two groups of people. One is the youngsters that expect higher salary. I have people that come in, I'm paying a market rate, a reasonable market rate. But when somebody is giving them a $500 more based on the 12 months, they actually jump ship to another company within a month of 1 month plus, in fact. So the thing is that all of us, we all understand that when we actually employ people in, there's intangible cost that's involved. So this is one group of people that I face, okay, which I have problem retaining them. I also find that their attitude can be, so when is going to be my next pay increment? So how much bonus am I going to get? So on and so forth, which they do not see. On the other side of the coin is that Is the company generally as a whole, is there business for the company, so on and so forth. They don't really bother with that, you see.
So it's more
And
of
then
what
on the
company can do for you rather than what you're going to do for the
Yes.
company, right? The attitude.
Exactly. And then on the other hand, I have people that has only like 10 years of experience, and then they want to be promoted to be a head of a certain department, and you know, even as a head of a certain department, right, the understanding, the responsibility that is behind it is always that even if I'm on leave, when there is urgent thing, you are expected at least to respond.
Yeah.
Okay, but these people can just go silent.
Yeah. Because I'm
It's
on leave,
just a
you don't work.
because I'm on leave, which I totally respect that. You see, when I am on leave, I mean, I personally, when I'm on leave, I also do not like people to disturb me, and I respect that. And I make it a point that when a person is on leave, I mean, if it is not a life and death matter, I would just wait and I don't disturb the person. But I think to a certain degree, when you are at a certain level, there is a certain level of commitment and responsibility that you have to hold on
Accountability.
to it.
Yeah.
Accountability, even when you are on leave, especially if you are going on long leave.
Yeah.
So this is the thing that I am, and these people can come back to you and say that why is not the company paying me of certain, and the kind of things that they're asking for is okay. It's almost the same as my CFO or my CEO. So I'm like, okay, we shall see we shall see about that.
How about in Keppel, Gary? Oh, sorry, before that, I think Vivek wanted to say something, right? Because Shirley started out saying that I'm not a fan of millennials, right?
No, I mean, first thing I thought was, okay, will you guys get the years right? Because a lot of people tend to confuse millennials with Gen Zs as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, 25 and above, till I think about 39, 40 will encompass the millennial generation. Below 25 will be the Gen Zs. But I can really relate to a lot of the complaints, or so-called the feedback that you had about this generation. They don't tend to stay loyal to organizations as much as the older generations. But I do believe that if the employers really focus on the branding side of things, so it's not just about the salary, because they don't really only focus on salary. They look at all the other factors as well. And I think that's where I think employers need to bring up the not finance related stuff, and work on those things. So in terms of how can I get the same kind of work-life experience in another organization? So if they are leaving for $500, that means there's nothing really tying them to the organization themselves. And in fact, one of my clients had said, they had one of their top persons, they actually resigned, and when the HR asked, so I thought you were like doing really well here, you were happy here, you were engaged, why are you leaving? And he's like, no, I've been thinking of leaving for a year now. So that kind of tells us that not enough conversations are happening, not enough two-way conversations are happening, rather, because one-way conversations of collecting feedback is happening, but there's not enough conversation happening on or like a dialogue like this. This is not happening enough in organizations, and that's why they tend to not feel as engaged. But yeah, I think we have to look into other ways of engaging them other than just using salary. So if organizations are willing to pay now to retain, then that's already like you are digging the well just because you're thirsty, but you should always be digging the well before you're thirsty. So
for the younger people, money is not the only thing. They need branding, they need a better work-life experience. I guess they need a better validation as well, right?
Yeah.
What else will turn them on to make them stay?
Right. I think one of the key issues is to get the line managers to really understand that any issues that you have with them it's not a HR problem, but it's rather me building the relationship with you, and not to deflect all issues of discipline or whatever to the HR. So taking the responsibility to keep the people within their team engaged is a new mindset for a lot of managers and leaders. That they think that this is not part of my job role. So I think that has to change firstly. Secondly, when it comes to millennials, I think it's pretty known already. If you search on the internet, you will see things like the why, the purpose. That's important. So having managers get on a conversation about ikigai, about what really keeps them engaged. In fact, having focus group discussions with the people who are already there in your organization, asking, hey, we do know that the Great Resignation is happening, but just want to get in touch with you guys and ask you, what's keeping you here? What really, if it's not the salary, what's really keeping you here, right? And if they are saying, no, actually it's just the salary, then you know that there are some initiatives you need to kickstart, right? You need to really look into what are the suggestions that they have, what are the ideas you have, and most of these things tend not to be expensive. They can be really simple, appreciative gestures. You can do simple things that the line managers themselves can do. And for that to happen, it has to start from the top down. People need to start realizing that I need to take a personal responsibility to take care of those within my team, the people who are under me, and then the people who are under you, they need to take care of the people under them, right? So these are some of the things that we need to start looking into to ensure that, people are staying, and even a $500 increase or even a bigger number doesn't really attract them, because you want to get to a point where like, even if I go and I get a better salary, I don't think I'll get what I have there. Right. If you are able to build that kind of a culture within your organization, then that makes you unique and that makes you stand out. That builds a loyalty, because millennials are not loyal to companies like the older generations were. I don't think they are more loyal to themselves. Right. So it's about how do you keep them longer as opposed to how do you keep them forever. Yeah.
So there's no such thing in Chinese. They say 忠心耿耿, loyalty, right? There's no such thing anymore, right? Because in fact, I think you and I, Vivek and I were in the same, I think 2 years ago in the MediaCorp show, right? It was a 1 hour panel show. It's a live recording show. And then we talked about the same thing. I think I represented the older voice and he's the younger voice, about millennials and all that. And I was even saying that it was very normal to see resumes with about 6 months to 1 year. And people say they've already achieved what they need to have achieved in the 6 months, and then they jump jobs. So it's so jumpy. Because in my time, because my first job was a sales guy in Canada, and at that time, I think I stayed there for 6 years. But after that was 4 years, and after that was all 3 years, 4 years. And people said, "Oh, you have a problem staying on a job? Huh? You're a hopper." So 3 years, 4 years, they say was a hopper in my time, right? I'm 50 now, but the younger ones today, 6 months, 1 year is very normal, right? But what is it? Gary, you're the training, right? So does training help people to stay? I mean, I don't know. Will people, or is it because they get trained, they move even faster?
I think it depends. Some industries, some companies are training schools for their competitors. So that's one perspective. Well, in Keppel, we have about 60% of our workforce being millennials, and I think in a couple of years we will reach about 70-odd%.
Really?
Yeah, and I think beyond employer branding, and if I look especially for the locals, millennials are of a particular age range, and when they reach a particular age, their stage of life changes.
Yeah.
It's time for them to, it's the typical set up family, buy a house. In fact, you notice that even though millennials are not getting married, you see an increase of that, but a lot of them want to, live on their own, and that's a cost. So, I mean, linking to Shirley's point, why is it that for $500 they will leave? Because they are very practical. As much as the employer branding is good, and like, okay, why is employer branding important to me? It's so that it looks good on my resume if I decide I'm going to move sometime in the future. At the same time, linking to Vivek's point that there are certain intangibles that might be important to them that will hold them back. Like if, giving them more leave days, if a company is very family friendly, for example, I think these are things that will make millennials think twice about moving. And I think in Singapore, it's not easy to find a good boss to work for. So that's also something that holds them back. A great work culture, that's also something that people will really think twice. Money, of course, if like all of us in HR all know, if you ask a silly question on the engagement survey, do you think you're being paid enough? We all know the answer. The answer is no.
It's no.
But if you ask the question, do you think what you're being paid is fair? Then the answers change. Yeah. So I think it's a case that we just have being in HR, that's where the challenge comes in. Because we have multi-generations and multi-backgrounds, we have to find different approaches in one big organization.
But it depends on geography also, right? Different countries, they have, like in Philippines, for example, most of my almost 40 people all are in the age of 20 to 30 maximum, right? So I guess they fall in the generation millennial thing. Of course, we do a lot of virtual engagement. Last week we did Squid Game engagement, and we do a lot of these things, right? But I think if I were to give them all the engagement and all the fun and all that, but tomorrow if somebody pays them extra 1,000 pesos, they will jump, because it's Philippines, countries like India, some of the emerging countries, money is very important, right? Every 10% increment is a lot. But whereas in a developed country, I don't know, Ross, you have children who are millennial children, right? Or maybe even younger. Because you are probably already providing a comfortable home. So if my kids already live in a comfortable home, they have all the amenities, facilities, and all that, so they might not have the hunger. I don't know whether even the 4Cs are relevant anymore. Those days, car, condo, all this used to be important, but now I think people rather take the Grab or Uber and live in a co-living space. I think the whole concept has changed, right? The priorities have changed. Maybe as a mother of young people, what is your?
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, I also agree with what Vivek has mentioned. They only care about themselves. I mean, I would say generally, I mean, I'm not saying all okay. Partly also because right now, I think a lot of families provide their children with a lot that they have lesser to worry about. They have lesser so-called challenges that they need to face. They just need to worry about once they graduate, they come out, what should they be doing? So they don't really have that much of a commitment that they need to think twice before they accept any job. They just want to go with their interest. This is my general observation. But then again, with this whole COVID situation, we wouldn't know what's going to change, what will happen going forward, because now anything is possible and change is constant. So whatever that we are looking at right now, when I'm looking at my children, things can be very different. So then again, I cannot generalize, but in general, I feel that the younger generation is very different from our time, definitely. They have lesser commitment, challenges, maybe it's a different kind of challenges. So actually, Gary, I'm also quite keen to understand from you, because earlier you mentioned that because I know Keppel also emphasize a lot in terms of reskilling and also upskilling their people to stay current, right? So with this whole COVID thing that has actually kind of like evolved, what have you done, or rather your organization has done differently, to manage with these challenges when we talk about people coming and leaving with more options? In your opinion, what have you done differently as compared to the past in terms of talent development?
I think one of the things is definitely moving everything virtual. That's for sure. In fact, we partner with LinkedIn Learning. So I work quite closely with LinkedIn Learning on this. We try to do a blended approach, because as with all e-learning tools, if you just provide people with a subscription, it's not going to last for very long. Yeah. So we try to make it relevant for the employees by curating learning pathways. And it's not just about it being purely virtual. We do very much a blended style, working with external vendors. For example, digital transformation. It's something that every organization is doing. And different organizations or different BUs are at different levels of maturity. So in Keppel, I think we have gone past phase 1 already, which is the basics like your chatbots, your automation, your RPAs. So we're moving into the next phase, which talks about hyper automation, data fabrics, and things like that. Yeah. So it's a lot of pressure on HR to stay current. And HR no longer just looks at HR matters. We literally have to be a specialist in almost everything. Yeah.
I think Shirley also, I recently we chatted, and because Shirley, your head office is in Europe, Germany, is it a German company?
Yeah.
So,
German.
So what would you say, in your opinion or your observation, based on, we were talking about the Great Resignation is mainly because of the US market, but with your head office being a German company, which is more towards about the European market, right? Any differences in terms of behavior or in terms of challenges that you're facing because of this whole talent retention thing?
Well, I think from the beginning, generally, the company itself is in a very niche market. So it's going to be a difficult comparison, or rather a different comparison as compared to Keppel, LinkedIn, all this kind of tech companies. So I wouldn't say it's a fair comparison per se as well. But in fact, I think in my organization, right, I don't really see a lot of the resignation is not really that high, because as I mentioned, we have a lot of people that is coming from overseas. They are very niche in terms of their skills. These people are high-paid basically blue-collar worker skills, because of the specialty that we need. So the only comparison I can make is with the people that is within the office. That means the white-collar people. So the white-collar people, again, is still back to the millenniums, where we are seeing a higher level of people that are actually resigning. Okay, of course, actually, on a fair note, when you talk about work-life balance within this organization, when you talk about in terms of the benefits wise and so on and so forth, is actually generally quite okay, in comparison with a lot of other organizations as well. But I think the millennium, like people like myself, I would view things like medical insurance and all this kind of stuff, which is important for me, because when you have a family, all these things are cost to you, and these are important. But I have a resignee to come and tell me that, okay, actually the medical insurance is not important to me, because I am young, I do not have a medical issue, so it's not important to me. So ultimately what they are looking for is still a difference in terms of their salary. So recently we managed to convince one person to stay within the organization, and one of the reasons is also because this person recognized that they have good bosses. He has a good boss. There is still a certain level of work-life balance, and we did some changes to his salary, and eventually he stayed with the organization. So there are always still room to negotiate with them, when you have all the rest of the things in place. But however, I would still say that the monetary concept in the younger generations are still at the very high level. It's still at a very high level, because the people that are experienced with, the first thing they will come to me and say that, okay, I'm not getting enough salary. So
it's never enough, right? Money is never enough.
I mean, for all of us, even for all of us, I'm sure at one point it is not enough. But I think we have come to a level to say that, okay, what is at a reasonable level and what is at the acceptable levels. I have people who are at the 30 plus. When I give another set of portfolio to my staff come back to me and said that, oh, I'm expecting, because I take on a new portfolio, I'm expecting 100 or 200 more because I take on this portfolio.
So maybe the question is, your extra portfolio is only worth $200.
So
they equate it to value themselves.
Exactly. So these are all in the early 30s people. So I was shocked. I mean, if on the other hand, when I look at it, from my angle, when I was at that age, if my boss were to come to me and say, hey, Shirley, I want you to take on the Malaysia market or whatever market, I will gladly take it on.
Jump on it.
Because it is my opportunity to learn more about the market. Like now I'm in this organization. I mean, I've been doing Southeast Asia for many years. And when I came over here, I was excited because I got a chance to do Korea, where I really do in depth. And that's where I find that, Korea market is very different. It's almost like Japan market, but it's very different from all the rest of the Southeast Asia. I don't go to my boss and say that, hey, boss, I'm taking on Korea, which is outside of my previous role, so you must give me an X dollar amount increase, so on and so forth. No, I look from the angle that it is an opportunity for me to learn. And after learning a few years in my next career move, I would be able to tell my next employer and say, hey, I have this years of experience dealing with Korea. I know what to do with them. You see, so the concept, the perception that is from the youngsters are very different from us right now.
The motivators are different.
Correct. And sometimes I am not sure, is it something wrong with me or is it something wrong with them?
I think it's a linking to Shirley's point, right? Why is there a difference? It's also because you brought a very good point. They say they're not being paid enough, and like if you give them something, they always want to have more. It's because in this current landscape, right, it's very easy for them to find out how much they are worth. And it starts off with talking to their friends. I believe the older generation, right, you wouldn't openly tell your friends how much you're earning. You always be very modest. Okay, like I earn about that or about enough. But nowadays, millennials are very open. I earn, 4 figures, 5 figures, and things like that. And if you go, you go on Glassdoor or anything, you see the numbers. And they have a very skewed perception. They don't understand, like, for example, banking and finance will definitely be super high earners. Tech will definitely be super high earners. But what they see is data. If they compare with like manufacturing or retail, you have to benchmark accordingly, but they don't have that knowledge. So they just take it as face value and say, I should be paid more.
Yeah.
But Gary, let me point out one point to you. You see, how do I put it that way? The thing that I really struggle with is when they tell me, when I have my staff coming to me and ask me, what is gross salary? When I ask this person to take on the salary portfolio, I have this person who has been working for payroll in her previous company, like maybe 2-3 years, came to me and asked me, what is considered basic salary? What is gross salary? You know, I have, and this is the same person who come and tell me I want a 100, 200 increase. I have a very big issue with that.
This person hasn't got the IHRP certification. Right?
I have a very big issue.
I know what you mean. There's this very common phenomenon that I experience with millennials as well, which is that sometimes ambition doesn't match capabilities.
Yeah.
Exactly.
They think I've got 2 years, I already can be a director and all that, right? I know.
I'm not discounting their capabilities.
Yeah.
I think the world is moving a lot faster, and with how things are changing, past experience may no longer be as relevant as before. So we have to take that into consideration. But it's trying to ensure that we can measure people on a common baseline. Yeah.
So, but the problem with the millennium is that they expect to be fed. That is my biggest issue when it comes to when they ask me for salary increment, because they expect to be fed. When I give you something, they expect that, okay, I also give you all the ingredients so that you can start cooking. You know, they don't even bother to chop. They don't even bother to find out what is the ingredient that is needed. They don't bother to chop. They don't bother to think how are they going to put in the ingredients when they are cooking. No, they don't. They only expect, okay, how do I cook this dish out? Nah, this is the dish. I have a very big issue.
I think Vivek is raring to say something. I can just see him going from mic.
I totally.
And by the way, this is not a millennial discussion. This is Great Resignation across all profiles. But anyway, since you brought up the millennial thing.
So over to you.
No, I think like what you said, right? They expect things to be done. One of the key reasons, perhaps, one of the reasons why they're like that is because they grew up with a lot of their adult figures actually telling them, what can I do for you, right? And that's from schools to the career counselors, guidance counselors, the lecturers, right? All the way throughout their childhood, they actually grew up with adults who were more towards, hey, how can I help you succeed in life? And then they enter the workforce where they're expected to swim on their own, right? I'll throw you into the waters and you need to learn how to swim. So that's a very different culture shift that from what they have experienced from the adult figures back in their school life and their personal life, and then in the workplace is a very different environment. So that could explain why they have that kind of mentality. Secondly, it's also about opportunities, right? So they are like what Gary said, they are looking at all the other people within their cohort, from their college or from their classmates. What are they earning? And they're comparing. And why they're comparing? Because we are much more connected through social media. We have sites like Glassdoor that actually shows you, and they are looking at people who are doing not just one job but multiple jobs, right? They are doing their own side hustles as well. So they realize that opportunity is in their favor. They can, if they choose to, embark on different journeys on top of what they're doing as a full-time career. So when they have the idea of what they can do, what are their backup plans, they also tend to ask for more compared to last time when even having a side hustle is considered like moonlighting. It was not really welcome. It was in fact discouraged. But today startups, they say, if you have a side hustle, let us train you and let us help you, let us mentor you, so that even your side hustle can keep you more engaged with us in this organization, right? So we actually encourage you to have all of these things. Then another thing also, when it comes to reward schemes, I feel like they haven't really changed since the baby boomers times.
Yeah.
So
Talk about it,
having
cannot have one size fit for all kind of package, and no point having marriage allowance when nobody wants to get married, right?
Yeah,
In
exactly.
fact, one of our leadership classes, we even cover this component called the Accenture's motivation-based incentive scheme. So you cannot have the same kind of incentive schemes or fringe benefits for everyone. For the younger crowd, maybe you give them a gym membership. For the older one, maybe give them vouchers for go for Universal Studio or something like that. So you cannot have the same kind of benefits for everyone. Like the older ones, we care more about health talks and nutrition, that kind of thing. Younger ones don't really care. So yeah, you're right. The motivators are different for different age group, right?
Exactly. So having a wider spectrum of opportunities or like options to choose from would actually make them a little bit more engaged. Having the same things like mentioned, like health insurance may not be on their radar at this point in time, but there are other things that are definitely on their radar. Like Alibaba, they have a matchmaking service for employees within the organization, right? So if you are single and you're in Alibaba, then put your profile up on a board, and then we'll match you and see whether you can find someone. And millennials are complaining that they don't have time out of work to actually go out and date. This is a COVID situation. How can we even find a partner, right? And Tinder, and all those other kind of similar apps are what they're on right now, but they cannot find a real life partner that they are looking for. So if we really tune into what they really want, have those conversations,
motivators,
we can really find out what keeps them engaged outside of work related stuff.
That's because China birth rate is going down. So that is one of the initiatives that Alibaba is doing. You must understand the intention behind this whole thing.
Same in Singapore. It's not going any higher.
I think LinkedIn, you guys should LinkedIn has so many profiles, right? You guys should have a matching, you already got LinkedIn Learning, might as well LinkedIn Dates or something like that, right?
Oh, LinkedIn matching goes on 24/7 in the background. So basically, the people that you follow, the interests that you follow, the companies that you worked at or that you click on, right? It's like you will see, oh, have you considered working at this company? Like the matching is going on a 24/7 basis. But super interesting conversation. I wanted to add, we talked about comp and ben for a bit. I'm not a HR professional per se, but maybe to offer a perspective from a managerial standpoint, when we talk about acquiring the right talent and retaining them in this environment, I think two things. Number one, the interview process, and I'm going to tie back to like my own anecdotal experiences. And then number two, how we manage the expectations of the candidate or then become employee moving forward, right? So just now Shirley spoke about, someone who came on for a month and then asked for $500 or jumped over to somewhere else, right, Shirley, for a $500 increase. So for, just to draw like a contradictory scenario, let me compare two places that I've worked at. So before I worked at a large Singapore corporation, telco, the interview experience was very fast and very like chop, very short, I would say. There was only two levels. Okay, first level, I didn't even really meet a TA person. Someone screened me, based on my CV, and then said, "Oh, do you want to meet the hiring manager?" So my first interview was hiring manager. My second interview was a panel kind of presentation with some teammates and my manager's manager, right? And then I pretty much got an offer within 2 weeks. Okay. Now, while at that time I was very grateful and very happy with how short that process was, I can see how that might result in making some not optimal hires, right? Now, contra that to what I experienced at LinkedIn, where it was a 5-step process. And aside from the 5-step process, I had a lot of conversations with people in the team, with conversations outside of the interview process with my 2B hiring manager, and we spoke about a lot of things outside of just capability to fulfill the role, including what the situation is now, what are the challenges of the job, not just like, oh, how great this company is and why you want to work here, but we spoke about the challenges of the job, we spoke about why the previous person left, we spoke about the opportunities to grow, and it was all very real. And I think what that helped me see is an appreciation for what it would be like when I get there. I think a lot of people, like even in the interview process, do not really understand what it'd be like to get there. So everyone is quite mercenary, you know. They're like, "Ah, yeah, okay lah, as long as they're willing to pay me, as long as, you know, reputable company, you know, I'll just join the company, right?" Then when I get there, I find, okay, there's a toxic environment which I didn't know about. There's a boss who's a micromanager that I didn't know about. There is, you know, like other departments who are stepping on my department which I didn't know about, right? And then after like, I don't know, 2-3 months, I feel like leaving, right? So I think the interview experience is important, not just to assess capability and evaluate, you know, like potential, but also to you know, measure a fit lah, and get to know each other really well.
That's why in Avance we have 4 to 6 rounds.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
really
so-
dice it out, right? Because the thing is that, so I work in large corporations, I work in different countries as well, and I worked in a startup, but it's an MNC startup. And when I started this company in 2016 April, I only knew how to do an MNC way because I've never really worked in a pure local country startup. So we went international from day one. My workforce is everywhere now. So, and then with COVID, you have remote management. There's a lot of challenges as well, right? But the thing is, I think the problems are different. And I think we talked about how to retain people, the motivators are different. But when you're talking about the age profile of an employee, my youngest being, I think, 21, and then all the way up to, I have 59 years old. So I've got the whole spectrum of workforce now, right? And I'm not in the middle, probably, since I'm 50, I think probably in towards the 50s range. But is it the challenges are different, the motivators are different, the attitudes are different. And it's not necessarily the millennials are the problem. The older ones also have different challenges. Everyone has different expectations as well, right? When they coexist. But I think the one common thing across everyone is probably the problem is the burnout problem. I think people are getting burnt out because in some companies, I think it's quite gray. One of the web cafes, we talked about work-life integration, right? So it's no more about working from 9 to 6. You could be working from 9 to 12, and then 2 hours you do something else, and then come back, and then you take a night call. Because a lot of the companies are global we're working for, right? And so even for us, we have people sitting in other parts of the world where I sometimes have to wake up at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., take a call as well. So it's a very different kind of work environment, but some people cannot take it. They find it very burnt out. Some people a little bit also, right? They are being pushed at the edge of the cliff and they said, you know what, I can't do this, I give up. So some people, and I think that is different because you see, in support of the younger ones also, right? The younger ones are also more entrepreneurial, right? Because maybe the basics are already met. It's Maslow's hierarchy, right? So the basics of, you know, they already have a condo, car, comfortable, parents that dine out every other week or maybe multiple times a week. A lot of basics are met. So now they don't think they need to work so hard. So when they come out, they work for 2 years. After that, they become entrepreneurs. And that's how you got unicorns, right? Look at your Secret Lab and all that. These are very young people. So I think it's also a good thing, right? I mean, because the needs are, the basics are met, their hierarchy of needs looks completely different. But then the burnout is a common problem. So are people resigning because of burnout? And what makes them think that joining another company will not have the same burnout issues? Is that a big problem? Because everyone talks about that, right?
On burnout, the LinkedIn stat, or what we're seeing through our kind of research and data, is that burnout as a reason for leaving has increased by an average of 9%. It's a global number. Okay,
9%, is it?
9%, yeah. So this doesn't seem like I mean, it's a reason, but it's not like, you know, the reason, if you know what I mean. Right? It's not like the reason that everybody leaves, but you know, we accept that it's there. What burnout says to me is that people are not having, you know, constant, open, and transparent conversations. You know, I think, okay, so on to like management or manager to team member communication, ongoing basis, right? I think in Singapore or in Asia, there's this culture of, you know, I don't tell anyone that I'm leaving if I feel like leaving, right? I don't tell anyone I'm leaving. I go and interview a lot of places, you know, I will like secretly over my lunch break, I'll go and like interview and stuff like that. And then there's this phrase called throw letter, right? Because the assumption is by that time they're like fed up, you know, I don't want anything to do with this company.
Yeah.
Like, no, my boss, take it, I throw a letter and, you know, 28 days and I'm gone, right? Don't want to see you already. So, contrary to this, my previous company, Nobi and LinkedIn, the management style has been more of more frequent one-on-ones and more open conversation. At LinkedIn, there's this cultural thing called the next play, where people are actually encouraged to think about what are you going to be doing after you leave LinkedIn, because we accept that people are not going to be here for their entire careers. They might be here for, you know, 1 year, they might be here for 6 years, you know, some have been here for 15 years, you know, and so on. But how would you treat employees differently if you accepted that they are transient and you are part of their journey through their career, and how that has reflected in the way that LinkedIn managers, at least from what I observe, treat their people, is to have very open conversations and be interested in where the employee wants to go from a growth perspective, right? From whether, growth can be your monetary growth, can be your personal, development, your skills and so on. But you have conversations with them about, you mentioned that, you want to eventually get into a McKinsey, consulting firm. These are the skills that you need. I can put you in the opportunities, that will let you deal with the stakeholders and give you the right skills and experience in order to get that, And as a byproduct of that, candidates feel like, wow, this place really helps me grow, right? Rather than it's a kind of, you're on that side of the fence, I'm on this side of the fence. You give me more work means I must demand more money. It's so transactional and so mercenary, right?
Yeah.
And further on, okay, and I'll end with this part. There has to be, first of all, more conversations, right? More one-on-ones. But how do you do that at scale, right? So I'm going to do a very small plug here. So at LinkedIn, we acquired this company called Glint, right, which is a people success platform, do pulse surveys and stuff like that. And we actually get, instead of doing the kind of traditional way of, having a Hewitt or Towers Watson, what have you, to run a professionally run engagement survey, 6 months later, they'll have this big presentation and show all the results, which is a bit hard to act on because I was part of that team at my previous job at Singtel also, like the engagement team. But now the data is a lot more. Can you guys still hear me?
Yep.
You guys are frozen for a bit.
No. Oh, I think you're the one freezing. You're the one freezing. Okay, I think let's go around. I think we need to.
You guys are still frozen. Can you hear me?
No, I think you are frozen, Chimi. But now we got your point. And I think we need to. My bar manager is already saying our coffee club is closing soon.
Someone else can go first.
Yeah. So going around, anyone else has anything else to add? I think we've talked a lot about different things across all age group. Maybe Vivek, you want to start first to close off the bar?
I mean, thanks, Chiming, for sharing that example of the next play. I think that's a really good example of how organizations can be a little bit more progressive in understanding that the Great Resignation, is something that, is a byproduct of how we've been doing things. And it's also a reminder for us to maybe change things up so that we can understand that, as employees start coming in, we can understand, especially for this generation, they're not going to stay for life, right? It's not going to be a thing. So how do we adapt to that and to all the other changes that's happening, right? I really enjoyed this discussion. Thank you, everyone, for sharing so openly.
Thanks for the millennial voice, Shirley.
Well, I think, I always believe that it's never a one-size-fits-all situations. All of us, we have to be agile and be able to make changes as and when we go along and as and when we face different situations. But I do really appreciate this time, and I really learn a lot from the rest of you guys. So hopefully we will have more such conversation in the future as well. Thank you so much for
and this definitely doesn't look like a chat we can finish in 1 hour. There's a lot to talk about. Gary?
Yeah, I think the discussion has been quite insightful. Although we kind of like shifted towards millennials at some point.
Bit,
but I think it's natural because the millennial workforce is becoming a much larger proportion as compared to 5 years ago. So the challenges that both Shirley and myself are facing is becoming more profound, and it will continue to be. And I think it's also a good opportunity for HR to step up. I think the pandemic has made many businesses realize that HR has a very important role to play.
Oh yeah, big time.
Yeah, and it was interesting, we were talking a bit about employee engagement earlier. I think engagement and commitment are two very, very separate words. So are we going for employee engagement or employee commitment?
That's another. I think that's a good topic for another coffee session. Ross?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm using this session.
You're not hearing you, Ross. Your mic has gone off.
Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Yeah.
So, in fact, one of the things I wanted to also understand more is in view of time. But I'm just thinking, like, in your opinion, what will the future workforce looks like? But then we can leave it for the next discussion. But in general, I'm using this session like a sounding board to myself. Imagine we belong to the same organization today. We have different age group, different opinion, and generally, everyone has a different views. So it really tells me that communications and also being agile is really, I know, key factors in terms of how to stay relevant for the future of work. There's so many factors to be successful in our role in an organization with all these changes and all these disruptions. So it's how ready we are in terms of adapting ourselves, and also how do we work as a team where, you know, I actually came across a training session previously. It was a very interesting one. It's a session whereby we have very young millennials as well as very older generation employees in the same training workshop. And because of their differences, the training itself became more challenging for the trainer. But at the end of the session, right, when the session ended, everybody kind of like learned so much from each other.
Yeah.
And they realized that actually everybody can work together if they kind of like, you know, having open conversations like this, which they were never encouraged to do so. In an organization, it's always like this. You are always encouraged to say good things, the right things, the diplomatic things, and you don't really open up for discussions like this, like what we have today. So to me, I thought this is a very interesting session. I'm just trying to imagine myself working in an organization with, you know, the different individuals. It was a very good learning session for me. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that.
Awesome, awesome. So, I mean, I think once we finish this, close this bar, and you share these recordings, we'll share the recording, and you please share with your network. And when you do that, I think you might want to use it as a platform to launch some insights from your community as well. Because I think a lot of us have, like for me, I've got a huge CEO community who all, I don't know, the last CEO community with Web Cafe, we talked about this as well. So we have our own headaches as well, right? And challenges. So and the challenges keep on coming. It's like playing a game, right? One day you put it out, and the next moment another one comes out. So it's like different fires every day. And I'm sure all of you have faced the same thing. So good session, but I think also give me ideas for more topics for the future Web Cafe. So great for a great week. I know it's a Monday, and also enjoy happy holidays. This is the last Web Cafe for this year, and then we're going to do one in January. All right. Cheers, guys.
Sorry, I just want to say one more thing. I realized that we are